Okay, Dr. Viva. So tell us why we needed the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
So I would say historically, going back into the 1800s, during Reconstruction, we have our Reconstruction amendments. Before the 14th Amendment, all persons non-white, and this is still in the U.S. Constitution, were considered three-fifths of a human, three-fifths, three-fifths of a person. So if you're not a whole person, you're not a citizen, and white men were considered citizens. So how, you can't vote if you're not a citizen. So the 13th Amendment abolished slavery except for those who are duly convicted of a crime. And so another book to add to the list is The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. She talks about that. Um, Mass incarceration happened. The 14th Amendment said those who are born in the United States are citizens of the United States, and some rights that were federally were attributed then to the states. And then the 15th Amendment gave the right to vote to the Black man because women did not get the right to vote to 1919 with the 19th Amendment. So, but there's a clause at the end of those amendments that says, you know, particular laws can be made to enforce those. We know that we had a period of Jim Crow, what we call Jim Crow, after Reconstruction, which ended in 1877, because after the Civil War, the Reconstruction period is after the Civil War, where the Union was wanting to come back, reconstruct itself to be whole again. And it ended, that's when, I'm sorry, first Black people were in Congress, in the US Senate, were elected officials in political office. So they wanted again to subjugate us to not being citizens according to the law. So with terror, it was with terror. We think about the Ku Klux Klan. And so we were terrorized not to vote, not to engage in voting. And the Voting Rights Act came about as a way to secure, to help us, give us protection that we cannot be discriminated against under these reasons to vote. Because even though the NAACP, people say it's a Black organization, but it's really a civil rights organization. And more white people started the NAACP than African Americans. So it's the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. And it started in response to lynchings. We were being lynched and hung, with nooses for various reasons. But they are one of the, key leaders. Another one of my frats, A. Philip Randolph, which started with the March on Washington. And, there's a picture with Lyndon Baines Johnson, LBJ, who was from Texas, I believe, a Southern, but he was a Democrat. And how he signed, momentous legislation. It's an executive order. It's an act, just to protect us, to help us. And a movie I'm just thinking about, Mississippi Burning, that I talked about, with Chainer, Schwerner, and Goodman were killed because in 1964 they went into Mississippi and they just wanted to register people to vote. So people were losing their lives just to be enfranchised, to take part in their civic engagement, which any citizen has a right to do and should do, right? So it was not a privilege, but a right. So that's why the Voting Rights Act, came into being when you think about years of disenfranchisement. We pay taxes. I should be able to have some say and be part of that decision making process of what happens with my money. That's how I'm kind of just, at the foundation of it all. And the government is a republic. We elect people to represent us, right? So they're some places making decisions that happen still to this day. So why I can't take part in that process? And if you do things contrary to the will of the people who voted you, then we need to vote you out and fire you. and getting someone else, right? So when you think about just voting, so that was the necessity of it because a particular group, a particular demographic were being terrorized, killed, um, disenfranchised, to not engage, to not have civic engagement.
So, with all that history, why do you think people don't vote today?
I think there's a lot of apathy. I think that people don't believe in their power. Um, Honestly, I say you have these gangs, right? Because money, actually, my coworker and I'm trained as what you call a macro level social worker. So she's trained clinically. And there was this law about doing mental health in schools. And we were like, what? What's going to happen with the mental health providers? And how did this come about? We weren't even consulted, you know. But people get so, if I'm engaged, y'all not going to listen to me. No one listen to me. Y'all do what y'all want to do anyway. Um, because it's the people with the money. And she ended up looking at who were making donations to her, not to, well, contributions, because it's not donations, it's not write off, right? But they were contributing to the campaign. So you're who you're beholden to. Is it really the people who vote for you or the people who give you money? Um, in that sense. So it's like, okay, I don't have money. And then at the end of the day, they're making this bill for people who receive Medicaid, which are poor people, right? So, and sometimes how things have to, because we're working so hard, do I even have time to be engaged, to know what's going around? Because stuff gets so messy that you can't even keep track. And it just the way, do we want to listen to the news or do I want to take the time to read about what's happening? Um, so I can know for myself, right? And go and maybe read this law because you're telling me one thing, but when I read it, it's something different. And I think people get tired and they get wore out that you have hypocrites. They say one thing, but then they go in and they do something else, you know, or they say they want you involved, but they want your involvement to be as long as they can dictate it and not for you to be contrary, right? Because in a democracy, we can agree to disagree, but some people don't want you to agree to disagree.
So
So I
that's
think
why. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
that's why I think some people are just have apathy or people are not held accountable for certain things that they make.
So that's why the Lord has me doing this initiative. So, like I said, choose to love. Love is an acronym where L is to look back, O is to observe the present, V is to have a vision for the future, and E is to understand each part of that is important. And so I'm so glad that you're here sharing the history because I feel as though some people may have heard about it, but we want to empower them to really know what has happened up until this point to give them their right to vote. We do have a right to vote. And using that to observe what's currently going on and how what you do today can definitely shape the future. That's the vision. So I really appreciate you sharing that background information.